Hello and welcome along to this week's edition of the Clare Champion Sports Chat podcast. We hope that you're keeping safe and well wherever you're listening in this week, and that everybody's following those HSE and government guidelines so that we can hopefully all come through the right side of this current crisis. Not a whole lot of live sports obviously to update you at the moment about, but we do have some good pieces in this week's paper with the likes of Ailish, Considine, Colm Collins and David Reidy, and we'll be talking more about what we'll get in next week's paper just at the very end of this week's show. But first, let's start off by hearing a little bit of what Colm Collins had to say. We spoke about this new reality that everybody's getting used to.
We've a lot more serious things to think about. So that, it's hard to know where things are going to go. But I suppose the important thing is that we do the right thing and get this thing under control. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, have the lads been kind of still tipping away with their own programs and things like that?
Yeah, I noticed yesterday now in the media there was a lot of people involved in the intercounty teams wanting clarification from the GA about what's going on. I think that they should kind of give us some sort of a plan A, B and C, so the players know what they're doing. I think that would be important. I mean, anytime I speak to the players, that's the first question you're asked, what's going to happen, and I suppose the unfortunate answer is that you don't know, because nobody knows where. I think it's going to take a bit more time. I mean, obviously the measures we've taken are going to take effect, but how effective they're going to be, we're not going to know for a while more. So I think that it's going to be at least until these restrictions are lifted in May before they'll be able to see where it's going, or be able to predict where it's going, or have we got a handle on it. But it's very difficult for the players. So it's a tough one trying to train without any idea what's going to happen. But I think that we should get some. I would agree with people that spoke up. They should get some direction from Croke Park, as in, this is plan A, B and C, and this is the way we're thinking. But not leave everybody in the lurch. And that means, everybody that's involved. I mean, I think that everybody would like to know, club managers and club players as well, would love to know what's going to happen and what's the thinking and what way are people, what way are, as I said, you don't have to say exactly, but give us a plan A, B and C or whatever,
Yeah, what would be your ideal outcome to it, or what do you think is realistic, I suppose, more specifically?
That they get a cure for it tomorrow morning. Listen, see, I suppose the most important thing, Derek, is that everybody stays safe, from my point of view, and that we do the right thing, and that we don't, we don't endanger anybody in society that's vulnerable. That's vital. So that takes precedence over everything else. What happens sports-wise then is I don't really mind what way it goes. I mean, obviously I've been banging the drum of an intercounty for an open draw for a long time, and I'd love to see that happening, and it's been a knockout if that was to be the way it went. I think it would. You not alone. You'd be talking about filling Croke Park with 82,000, but if you had an open draw, imagine selling tickets to that. Should be some contrast to the usual story when we're drawing the championship. If anybody could draw anybody, but I think that's the kind of way it has to go. But that the brutal facts of the matter are that the last thing that's going to be allowed here is large gatherings of people coming together. That's going to be the very last thing that's going to be allowed. So we probably have to think outside the box on this one. And as I said, I don't have any, whatever. I think the important thing here is that people's health and safety is the most important thing here, and what happens with sport is really only a sideshow. Really, this disease is obviously fatal, especially for people who are vulnerable, that have underlying symptoms of respiratory problems or anything like that. So or have something else going on, so that it's vital that they're protected and kept safe.
Would you be in favour of behind closed doors as an option?
Well, sure, listen to me, Derek. I think that while people involved with teams love sport and are obviously deeply immersed in it, I think also the supporters are immersed in it. But I mean, behind closed doors, but with some sort of an option that people could see in the match, that there would be some sort of a live stream. I think that it's a definite possibility that people would be able to see these games and bring some sort of normality back to their lives. I mean, supporters, we've got a very loyal bunch with us in the Clare football setup, and they would really love to get back to watching games again. And I think that if it's going to be behind closed doors, there has to be some mechanism where people can be streamed and people can see these matches.
Yeah, I suppose the one maybe certainty we have at the moment is that if we're talking May 4th or 5th, I think it was May 10th, Clare and Tip were due to play in Thurles. We can probably say now that it's certainly not going to be anything like the championship we thought it would be.
Oh no question. The whole thing has changed, and and it's a bit like everything that happens. Like any difficulties you encounter or anything that happens to you in your life, I mean, it's not about what happens, it's how you react to it. And I think that we can view these times as an opportunity rather than a problem. And in a lot of cases, it's an opportunity to kind of take stock and see what we've kind of missed. And like that whole area, I mean, at the moment, of course, there's very little interaction because people can't meet each other, but that people can take a breath now and think about the things that are really important to them in their lives. And I think that's one of the things that's in this. And then the other thing is just people don't start getting into a huff about one particular championship or another, that if we can get some sport back and get people, get something there for people to view and to help with them, to help them in their lives, that we should try and get it back, and whatever happens. And I think that it's important, to make sure that the overall picture is seen, and that's what's important stays important, and that we don't get sidetracked.
Absolutely. On a personal level, away from sport, Colm, obviously your own business, Acorn Hardwood Floors, you took the decision to kind of close up shop for a while as well.
Yeah, well, we ironically we were quite busy because of so a lot of places where you normally would have very little access to, like pubs and hotels, were shut, so that we were quite busy. But once the directive came on that Friday night, we just shut down, and that was it. And now, listen, this is another area of the most important thing is just to get control of this virus, and whatever has to be done has to be done. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah, but I suppose there will be, you're well immersed in business, there will be places that you have seen closed that may not open again. I suppose post-COVID-19 is going to be a very different reality to what we know now.
Oh, it is, yeah, there's no doubt about it. As the man said, I'm no economist, but it's going to have devastating, there's going to be devastating consequences of this close down. So there's, and as you said, there's going to be businesses that would probably not open their doors, so there's that there's going to be a big fallout from this. But I suppose that the main thing is that that we respect and help the most vulnerable in our society this time, and that's the most important thing. And money in business, that'll all recover in time. So, but you won't get a lump from back if you lose them to this. So it's important that we keep the main priorities stay right, which I think they are at the moment anyway.
That's the views there of Clare senior football manager Colm Collins. Next up, we'll hear from another Kilmihil person, this time in the form of Ailish Considine. She, of course, had her second year down under with the Adelaide Crows in the Australian Women's Football League. Season cut short with COVID-19. Hadn't been going well for the Crows. They were more or less out of contention for the knockout stages. However, it's the journey home for Ailish that proved to be the big talking point as borders began to close right around the globe. But first, we spoke about what the immediate response to the crisis in Australia was like.
Even though it had hit over Australia and there was restrictions in place, it's just the whole another level over here with the restrictions and the 2K radius, and obviously been in quarantine for 14 days due to international travel and stuff. It's a big shock to the system and a big difference in terms of coming from city life. Even though Adelaide isn't crazy busy city, it's more beach than city, but it's still there's still a lot happening. And then coming back to rural West Clare when your neighbours are cows and all you can see really is a green field, so looking out from the window. But it's obviously it's a big change coming from that to this, and it's just been a crazy month at this stage since it already kicked off. So big adjustment to come home and not really be able to enjoy like things that I really love about home, and that's your family and obviously your friends and everything that goes with that. So that's kind of been the hardest part, really, not being able to fully embrace your family and go see your friends that you haven't seen in quite a while, or even your teammates that you haven't seen, like the Kilmihil girls and everything. So it's been strange, but it's a relief to actually have gotten home, because it proved to be quite a hard journey to actually get here.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Was there much of the coronavirus in Australia versus the coronavirus in Ireland? Had they got to grips with it? Had it become the big thing before you left?
Yeah, I think they had the benefit of it hitting late, and they were able to see the damage that it had done in other countries, and the other, what other countries were doing to prevent it and try and stop it and slow it down. And I think they had that advantage over a lot of places, and they were able to tackle it pretty early, and they seemed to have it under a good bit of control, especially in SA and especially Western Australia and the NT. A little bit more like prevalent in obviously Sydney and Melbourne, which bigger cities, bigger populations. But I think the gaps between because it's such a big country, the distances between the states, you have to travel through air, otherwise it's too difficult to get there. So I think they had that advantage that they're a spread out country, the population isn't quite as big and for the size of the country, and they had the advantage of seeing it before and the damage that it was done. So even though the restrictions were there and stuff, I still had from day to day stuff. It was still a lot more freely and stuff and that kind of thing. So, you were allowed to, exercise. There was no real limit as to how far you could go. There was still takeaway coffees and restaurants and stuff. Obviously, they were closed for sit-ins and stuff, and you could still exercise with one other person. I think that they had put a lock on that you could only be one other person. It was a lot more freedom, but then they did shut all the borders, which made travel quite difficult, and that's where things got a little bit hard for me to get out of there, even though it was classed as essential travel. And my original flight was via Abu Dhabi, and on the same day the flight got cancelled because Abu Dhabi shut their borders. So that was flight number one gone, and then I remember getting a phone call from Vicky because I'd known that my flight was on Saturday and this was Monday, and I'd gone on a road trip because I knew it was my last week, and I was in the remote areas of South Australia and had barely any coverage. And then when I found a pocket of coverage, I had about 20 missed calls from between Phil Harper, Vicky Dalby and Katrina Gill, all the people at the Crows, and I was like, what is after happening? And then turns out that the flight was cancelled because the borders had shut and there was no other way out. And then the only option was a $10,000 flight because all that was left on most of the planes was just business class. So I had about 5 minutes to make a decision on whether or not I wanted to spend 10 grand on a one-way trip home. So made a few phone calls and stuff, and then rang Vicky back, and she said, you can't take it anyway because it's gone. So literally at that stage on that Monday there was not a single flight out. I couldn't get out of Australia. So then we kept searching throughout the week to try to find a few more, and then Phil Harper was great. He really managed to look up as many flights as possible and got his travel agent involved, and we found a flight, which was the one I was at the airport ready to go on, and it was for the following Tuesday, and I had to go to Adelaide to Sydney to Jakarta, Amsterdam, and then Amsterdam to Dublin. Oh. That would have been my trip home. So it was a worrying trip because you kept hearing of the borders shutting in Thailand, and Malaysia Airlines weren't flying, and all these places were, which was close to the stopover, were all starting to shut their borders and shut down. So it was obviously a worrying flight because of the amount of stopovers. But look, it was a way home, and we were willing to take the risk. But it turns out when I checked my bags in Adelaide, the news literally just broke just after my bag had gone through that there had been 6 Qantas bag handlers had tested positive for COVID-19, and I was like, oh Jesus. I was like, this will either be the last flight out of Adelaide Airport or there'll be no flights out tonight. And it turns out there was no flights, so they did their best to try and source a plane and get, because there was 2 flights, one to Sydney, one to Melbourne, that were going out at the same time. They tried their best to try and get one of them out, but they couldn't, and that meant I couldn't make my connecting flight the following day in Sydney, and had contemplated driving, but we didn't have enough time because it takes 14 hours, and I think we only had about 12 to get there, so couldn't physically make it to Sydney in time, so that was another flight gone. So then I ended up booking a third one through Qatar, Qantas in Qatar, and that was leaving on Thursday last week. So eventually got going, got out of Adelaide, then had a 6-hour stopover in Melbourne, and then got Melbourne to Doha, then another 9-hour stopover in Doha, and then Doha to Dublin, and then Emer and Keith came up in 2 separate cars, collected me in Dublin, threw me the keys of the car without any hugs or anything, just to welcome home, and said, there you are, off you go, drive home. So then the other 3 hours drive home then from Dublin. So it was a long trip, and I had absolutely no idea what day it was, because between the days rolling into each other and the travel and everything, it was just chaotic. So it was a hectic few days, and up and down with emotions between leaving and then not leaving, and then leaving again, and then another flight booked and then cancelled, and then going again and then not going. So it was all up in the air, and I think they were probably happy to see the back of me by the end of it, because there was so much up and down between flights being cancelled and changing and everything. So yeah, it was a hectic couple of days, and trying to get flights out and trying to actually see what airports were still open and remaining open and not shutting their borders, and actually getting home. So I didn't actually believe I was going to get home until I landed at Dublin Airport, and I eventually did on Friday. So yeah, it was a bit of a trek home.
And I'd imagine that once you hit Kilmihil, sleep was the next day's plan, was it?
Yeah, I was actually, at that stage I had missed the night's sleep, so I had, Doha was the killer. I was there overnight, and I can't sleep on planes at all, so I literally ended up being up for 2 days straight. But when I came home, I was actually okay once I arrived in Kilmihil. I told Emer, I was like, have a can of Monster in the car for me, because I know I can't stop anywhere, and I know I'll have to try and keep awake. But I went for a run when I came home on Friday, because I was actually awake. So I was like, I need to do something. So I went for a run. But yeah, it was hard to get back into a routine. I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I went to bed pretty early, 9 o'clock, and woke up, was wide awake at 3:30. So, but that's normal with the jet lag and stuff, and I suppose everything that had gone on. I'd say my mother had a good night's sleep for the first time in about a week. So I think she was majorly stressed about all the flights and whether or not I get there, or if I get stuck in Doha or stuck in Melbourne or stuck somewhere. So best case scenario was actually when that flight got cancelled in Adelaide, because I was still in Adelaide. It was actually the best place. I was also worried that I'd be in Jakarta for an extended period of time, which would not have been ideal. So yeah, it all worked out in the end. I was lucky enough as to where my flights did get cancelled, that I was still in Adelaide, and that the one from Doha actually did go through. And I actually met Cora Staunton and Yvonne Bonner. They had come, their connecting flight came from Sydney to Doha, so we were on the same Doha to Dublin flight. So it was good to know there was someone else on the plane in the same situation trying to get home.
Kilmihil's Ailish Considine there, and you can read a lot more of her interview in this week's print edition of the Clare Champion. Finally, on this week's podcast, we'll bring you the thoughts of Clare's senior hurler David Reidy, with everybody now training in isolation and looking forward and thinking about what's going to happen next. I spoke to the Aero clubman about how he's getting used to this new reality.
The biggest thing, it's a lot more than sport. It's a lot more important than sport at the times we're in now. That the fact we're in an epidemic, and like it's not just us, it's the whole world. And sport kind of is only a small part of that. That's the thing we have to be looking out for. We have to be looking at the health of people and the safety of people more so than going out on a Saturday or Sunday and playing hurling or playing soccer or playing anything. But again, the sport is still a great relief. The fact we can do something individual by ourselves, and just to get the mental health right, it's still important in these times.
Yeah, have you found that kind of you nearly more appreciate, even the likes of going training on a bed Tuesday night now that you can't do it really?
Exactly. That's the one thing that's shown us, that we have to appreciate the time that we have, and I suppose the opportunities that we have when hopefully everything goes back to normal, that we have to grasp everything and live in the now nearly, and you can't be thinking too far ahead. You just have to live in the now and be appreciated of the time you have in the sport we play and the sport that's around us, because it is scary times for everyone.
And what was it like, I suppose, when the news first came through? That, were you told as a collective with the lads that, look, we're on kind of pause now for the moment?
That was the thing. It was kind of strange enough. We didn't really expect it. That we said we have to stop away from the collective training and go into doing individual things. So it kind of puts the onus on the player and the person to get this work done, and it's limited enough to what you can do by yourself. So you can do your runs. We were able to before get to the wall ball a couple of weeks ago, but that's nearly gone out the window now. It's kind of just doing your own runs. For me personally, I'm not too bad. I kind of have my sitting room is kind of turned into a little gym. I have kind of the barbell, the bench, and a few free weights. So I'm lucky enough I can still kind of keep a small bit active while we're training away by ourselves. But again, it's hard to know when we will be able to get back to collective training, and again, when we do go back to collective training, it's just appreciation of what we have and live in the now, as I said.
Yeah, and I guess there's a big talk as well about how long of a lead in there will be if there is a championship. Like, is it very difficult to keep training when you don't know what you're training for, if anything, this year?
Again, that's one of the biggest things. So we're kind of doing our individual running. We're trying to pick up the hurley off a wall. But we have, like, in the back of our minds, we still have a goal in our head that we're training for a championship. But it's the not known is the biggest thing, and it puts the biggest fear in us to a certain degree, that we're training, but what are we actually training for? Because no one knows if there will be a championship, and if there is a championship, when will it be? But we just have to prepare like there is, because you can't prepare when it will be too late.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned there, obviously everybody agrees that the health aspect is the big thing here, but I guess the sport can be that kind of distraction as well, because it's just completely wall-to-wall COVID-19, and maybe that's something of a release at a time as well.
Exactly, and kind of mental and physical health is extremely important. But there shouldn't be any excuses to not get your 15-20 minutes of your walk in a day. If you're more athletic, get your run in, do body weight exercises, and even online there's a lot of stuff giving 20-minute exercises. 20-minute kind of classes to do, free of charge. You don't need any weights. You can do your body exercises in your room. And again, it's important to take them that half an hour off If you're working, if you're lucky enough to be still working, take your lunch time, do a bit of work, and go out, get fresh air, go for your small walk, back into the job. And again, if you're in an unfortunate position not to be working at this time, try and still keep a routine is probably the biggest thing. Still get up in the morning, keep the mind active, and try and keep the body a small bit active as well.
Yeah, from a professional point of view, obviously you're not still in your role in LIT. You're kind of on hiatus at the moment, are you?
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough to be still working from home. So I'm in the marketing department, and we're kind of still letting our students know what's going on, and there's kind of changes every day. So it's important to keep them up to date regarding exams, and just all the queries that we're getting. So I'm actually lucky enough to be still working. But again, as I said, keeping my routine, taking my lunchtime, finishing that at 5 o'clock. And I suppose when you're working from home, it could be easy to leave the laptop on and go at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock. But it wouldn't be a good habit to get into either.
Yeah, you find there's a lot of uncertainty with the students as well. I mean, they'll be worried about exams and stuff like that. So I suppose it's good to have that outlet for the likes of yourself to kind of keep them posted.
100%. We're getting a lot of queries, and we're feeding information to students all the time. And to be honest, all of our professional services are still open in LIT as well. So they do have that release if they need to talk, and they have counsellors there as well, especially these times.
That's the views there of Clare senior hurling star David Reidy. Well, in next week's paper, we're going to be looking back on one of those big anniversaries, of course, that 1995 All-Ireland senior hurling final win for Clare. Ahead of that, I spoke to the captain, Anthony Daly. Here's just a little taste of what Dalo had to say.
It's what you've been dreaming about all your life now, kid. You're 25 years and they had to go over and take it. So, yeah, thanks to the Jesus that we got. But I knew as soon as we left my hurling, it was all over.
Little taste there of what Clare's senior hurling captain in 1995, Anthony Daly, had to say. You can read more of that in next week's paper, and we'll bring you that full interview in next week's podcast. Until then, do stay safe, do stay home, and we'll talk to you again shortly.